Look, most parents try to calm an angry child completely wrong. Not because they're bad parents, not because they don't love their kids, but because every strategy most of us reach for in the moment, the reasoning, the threatening, the bribing, the yelling back, does the one thing that guarantees the anger gets bigger, not smaller. It tries to fix the feeling before the child has been allowed to have it. And there is one country in the world that figured out a different way. Not recently, decades ago. A way of responding to childhood anger that is so simple, so counterintuitive, and so consistently effective that Dutch children are statistically among the happiest, least anxious, and most emotionally regulated in the entire developed world. This video is about what they do, why it works, and exactly how to bring it into your home starting today, even if your child is currently in the middle of a meltdown you don't know how to handle. Most parents have never heard of this. By the end of this video, you will never see your angry child the same way again. Before we get to what Dutch parents do, we need to understand why the strategies most of us use don't work, because the reason is not obvious, and once you see it, it changes everything. When a child is angry, really angry, the kind of angry that involves screaming or throwing things or saying things that make your jaw drop, what is actually happening in their brain is this. The prefrontal cortex, the rational, reasoning, decision-making part of the brain, has gone offline. Not metaphorically, literally. Under high emotional stress, the brain's threat response system floods the body with cortisol and adrenaline, and the neural pathways that connect the emotional brain to the thinking brain get functionally blocked. The child is not choosing to be irrational. They are neurologically incapable of being rational in that moment. Dr. Daniel Siegel, professor of psychiatry at UCLA, calls this flipping the lid. The emotional brain has taken over completely, and the thinking brain, the part that responds to logic, consequences, and reason, is not available for the conversation. Now here is why everything most parents try in that moment fails. Reasoning doesn't work, because the brain that processes reason is offline. Consequences don't work, because the brain that connects current behavior to future outcomes is offline. Yelling doesn't work, because yelling activates the child's threat response even further, driving the emotional brain deeper into survival mode and making the rational brain even less accessible. Bribing sometimes works in the short term, but it teaches the child that anger is a tool that produces rewards, which means more anger next time. Every one of these strategies is aimed at the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex has left the building. Dutch parents know this, and they do something completely different. The Dutch parenting philosophy does not have an elegant single name in English. In Dutch, the approach to childhood emotional life is captured in a word, bespreekbaarheid, roughly translated as speakability. The idea that everything, including uncomfortable emotions, can and should be named, acknowledged and spoken about openly. But in the context of an angry child in an acute moment, it expresses itself as a specific sequence of responses that Dutch parents apply with a consistency that, to outside observers, looks almost practiced. Step 1. They do not react to the anger with their own emotional state. This sounds simple. It is one of the hardest things a parent can do. When a child erupts, the parent's nervous system has its own threat response. The yelling, the chaos, the physical intensity of a child's anger activates the parent's amygdala, the same threat detection system that is driving the child's behavior. The instinctive response is to match the energy, to escalate, to assert authority, to end the dysregulation by force. Dutch parents are culturally conditioned to pause here. Not to suppress their own reaction permanently, but to delay it long enough to do something else first. They stay physically calm. They lower their voice rather than raising it. They slow down. They do not leave the room, and they do not attempt to stop the feeling. What this communicates to the child's nervous system, Underneath any words, before any conversation, is, "This is not a threat. You are safe. The feeling is allowed to be here." And the moment a dysregulated nervous system receives that signal from a regulated nervous system nearby, something begins to change. Dr. Stephen Porges, whose polyvagal theory has transformed how neuroscientists understand emotional regulation, documented this as co-regulation, the process by which a calm nervous system literally soothes a dysregulated one through proximity and physiological presence. It is not a psychological technique, it is biology. The Dutch parents' calm is not passivity, it is the intervention. Step 2. They name the feeling before they address the behavior. Once the acute peak of the anger has begun to pass, once the child is no longer at maximum dysregulation, Dutch parents do something that runs directly against most Western parenting instincts. They do not immediately address what the child did. They address what the child felt. "You're really angry right now." Not a question, not a challenge. A statement of fact that tells the child, "I see what is happening inside you. I am not afraid of it. It is real, and I am acknowledging it." This is called emotion coaching, and it was documented extensively by Dr. John Gottman at the University of Washington, whose research found that children whose parents acknowledged and named their emotions during difficult moments showed measurably lower cortisol levels, better emotional regulation in subsequent situations, and significantly fewer behavioral problems over time. The naming does not validate the behavior, it validates the feeling. And that distinction, which Dutch parents understand intuitively, is everything. Because when the feeling is acknowledged, the pressure behind it drops. The child's nervous system is no longer fighting to make the feeling visible, it has been seen. And a feeling that has been seen does not need to keep screaming to be noticed. Step 3. They reconnect before they correct. Only after the child has been seen, only after the emotional temperature in the room has genuinely come down, do Dutch parents move to what happened. What did you do? What could you have done differently? What happens next? In the West, parents typically reverse this sequence. They go straight to the behavior, to the consequence, the correction, the lesson, while the child is still emotionally flooded. The lesson does not land. The correction produces more resistance. The consequence feels like an attack. And the next time the child is angry, they remember that anger leads to punishment, not understanding. And the anger finds another way out. Dutch parents wait. The conversation about behavior happens when the prefrontal cortex is back online, when the child can actually hear it, engage with it, and internalize it. That is when correction becomes learning rather than provocation. This is not anecdote. The outcomes for Dutch children are documented at a population level, and they are remarkable. UNICEF's report card on child well-being, which measures childhood happiness, mental health, and life satisfaction across 38 wealthy nations, has placed Dutch children at or near the top of the rankings for over a decade. In the most recent comprehensive analysis, Dutch children reported the highest overall well-being scores in the developed world. The Amsterdam-born children and their development study, one of the longest-running longitudinal studies of child outcomes in Europe, found that Dutch children showed significantly lower rates of anxiety disorders, anger dysregulation, and emotional behavioral problems compared to age-matched peers in the United States, the United Kingdom, and most of Western Europe. A 2013 study published in the Journal of Happiness Studies, led by researcher Gus Speth, found that the single most predictive factor in Dutch children's well-being was not income, not education, not diet. It was the quality of emotional communication within the family. Specifically, whether children felt their emotional experiences were acknowledged and taken seriously by their parents. The Dutch approach to childhood anger is not a quirk of culture. It is a consistent, research-supported methodology that produces measurably better outcomes, and it is almost entirely absent from mainstream parenting content in English. Let's take it out of the abstract and put it in your living room. Your child comes home from school. Something happened. A friend said something, a teacher was unfair, a project went wrong. The details don't matter. They walk in the door already on a short fuse, and within 10 minutes, over something small, they explode. Screaming, maybe throwing something, saying things they don't mean. What most parents do: stop it right now! The anger spikes. Authority is being asserted against a nervous system that is in survival mode. You need to calm down. The child cannot calm down on instruction. They are neurologically flooded. This sentence communicates only that the parent wants the feeling to stop existing. If you don't stop, you're losing your screen time. The consequence processing part of the brain is offline. This registers only as another threat. Go to your room. The child is alone with a dysregulated nervous system and no co-regulating presence. The anger intensifies rather than resolves. What the Dutch parent does: they do not match the energy. They lower their voice. They might sit down, physically bringing themselves to the child's level, reducing the body language of threat. They stay in the room. They wait through the peak. Not passive, present. Their calm body is already working. When the peak passes, even slightly, they say something like, "That looks really big. You're really angry right now." Not, "Why are you so upset?" Not, "What happened?" Not, "There's no need to be that angry." Just the observation, the naming, the acknowledgement that what the child is feeling is real and visible, and not a problem to be immediately solved. Often, and this surprises parents the first time it happens, the naming alone causes the child to begin crying. Not from sadness, from relief. From the experience, sometimes for the first time in that day, of being seen. Then they wait a little more. They might offer quiet physical presence, a hand sitting nearby, or they might simply stay. They read the child. And then, when the storm has genuinely passed, tell me what happened. Not an interrogation, an invitation. And the conversation that follows, the one about what actually caused the anger and what to do differently next time, lands in a brain that is now actually capable of receiving it. You do not need to overhaul your parenting to bring this in. 3 specific changes will shift the pattern more than anything else. The first: when your child is angry, lower your voice instead of raising it. Not immediately calm, that is not always possible, and pretending otherwise is not helpful. But directionally, quieter, slower, lower. Your nervous system is regulating theirs. The signal you want to send is safety, not threat. Every decibel you lower is data your child's nervous system receives before any words land. The second: name the feeling before you address the behavior. Every time. You're really angry. That felt really unfair. You're frustrated and you don't know how to get it out. One sentence, before anything else. It does not need to be elaborate. It does not excuse the behavior. It simply acknowledges the reality of what is happening inside your child, which is the only thing that opens the door to everything that comes after. The third: wait until the window is open before you teach. The conversation about what happened, what was wrong about the behavior, what to do next time, that conversation has a window. The window opens after regulation, not during dysregulation. Teaching into a flooded brain produces resistance. Teaching into a calm brain produces change. The Dutch understand that patience here is not weakness, it is precision. You are waiting for the moment the lesson can actually land. None of these 3 things require you to accept the behavior. None of them mean the anger has no consequences. They mean the consequences are delivered when they can be heard, which is the only time they actually work. The Dutch did not invent a trick for managing children's anger. They built a culture that treats a child's emotional experience as something real, worth acknowledging, and safe to express, and then watched what happened to their children over generations. What happened is some of the happiest, most emotionally resilient children in the developed world. You do not need to move to Amsterdam. You need to do 3 things differently the next time your child's anger is in the room with you. Stay calm. Name what you see. Wait for the window. If this changed how you see your child's anger, share it with a parent who is in the middle of it right now. They need to hear this more than they need another consequence strategy. And subscribe if you want to keep going deeper into what actually works. Because next week we're covering the one phrase that stops most parent-child arguments before they start. See you then.